Hello. So you asked for it. How do you handle a large cast of characters? How do you handle 70 cats that you've added to your story for whatever reason? Why is there so many cats? You should check out the 9-point Kickstarter. It's on Kickstarter right now. There's only a week left and we need like $4,000. Man, what a struggle. Okay, so here's my tips on writing large casts of characters. I've done it a few times, and my tip number one is don't do it, ever, Don't make a large cast of characters. Each character you add to your story doesn't double your effort, it multiplies it, it quadruples it, it quintuples it if you add 5. It's exponential character craziness that you inflict upon yourself each time you add a whole bunch of characters to your plot. So stick to one main character, a few side characters, and then be on your merry way. Okay, so I might sound like I'm joking, but for the most part I'm not. Adding characters is the easiest way to end up with an out-of-hand mess. RPs, when you translate them, they usually have 1 million characters, but they don't need that many. So before you try and balance them all out, cut some down, get rid of some, combine the characters with other characters to make singular characters, and you'll save yourself so much trouble. Anything you can do to get the fewest amount of characters required to tell your story, do it. But aside from don't do it, what if you do have some characters, even if you cut down your characters to a minimal amount, you're still gonna have enough that you need some balancing. Even if you end up with a lead character and like a secondary lead, sort of like a subplot or two, you're gonna need some advice. So fair enough. Aside from don't do it, here are more tips. So tip number 2, separate your characters into different plot arcs. Like, separate them entirely. Put them on an island far away from each other. It's a lot easier to have a few defined plot arcs with their own set of characters that overlap on occasion. This is very easy to notice in fiction. Usually characters get broken up into groups, and sometimes the groups change up, and that's kind of fun and interesting. But characters, they break up into groups, whether physically or not. It's a very useful trick. And the way that you make it still feel like a large cohesive story is that you bring all these plots back together around your turning points, around your inciting incident. Well, I guess not. Everyone shows up for the inciting incident and then gets BTFO'd. And around the midpoint, the similar thing happens. But by the climax, they're all back together. Unless some of them died. Okay, tip number 2. Add characters slowly. Don't throw your 70 cats at your readers the second they open the page. Start with 1 or 2 cats. Or if you have 70 cats, you can show them all 70 of your cats. And don't expect them to know which one is Mittens and which one is Buttons. Just wait that out. Each character, each important character, each small group of side characters, they need their own scene to establish who they are, what their relationship to people is, how they interact, what food are they on, is it Iams, is it Whiskas, is it something highbrow like Instinct, Primordial, what is that one called? I don't know. Take your time, go slow, let people introduce themselves to your cats, let your cats introduce themselves to your readers, and you're gonna be good, but you're gonna end up with a whole bunch of pages. Did I mention that adding characters makes your comic really long and your life hell? Did I mention that? Okay, tip number 4. Characterize quick, fast, and effectively. Give your character one name, not 1 million nicknames that sound nothing like their actual name. Sure, your cat may be called Boots and Deathbringer and Lord of Pain and Frederick on occasion, but that gets really confusing. Just call him Deathclaw and move on with it, okay? Don't give yourself some million nicknames, especially if you have a lot of characters. And also, on top of that, give them a unique identifier. Put a little collar on Deathclaw that is very noticeable with like a skull on it. And then when people can't think of their name, they're like, the cat with the skull. And, some people just can't remember names really well, so they need some sort of visual identifier or character thing that they can hold on to. A lot of that comes down to character design in the case of comics, but it is very useful. and it is very effective for making your character stand out really quickly and easily. And finally, it's all still part of tip number 4, use strong character archetypes, personalities, etc. It's okay to be cliche out the front gate. You know why? Because it helps give your reader some sense of what a character is. Is your cat a sassy cat? Good. There might be more to him, but that comes later in the story. They just need to know the sassy cat with the skull on his collar is Deathclaw, and we're all good. And slowly over time, we get acquainted with Deathclaw, realize that he's sassy, he's mean, but he also likes snuggles, and he has a tragic past. Tip number 5 for writing large cast of characters, always cut to the character in the most pain. If you're struggling who to cut to next, pick the character having the worst time. Search out conflict. Sometimes your side or main characters have nothing on their plate for a bit, perfectly fine, and that just means it's the perfect time to make another cat's life miserable. Take away their food bowl, close the door, don't let them outside. It's their misery time now. Always pick the most miserable character, and you can usually keep moving at a good clip. There's other bits to it, but that's a good tip for when you're struggling. And tip number 6, bonus tip, because my first one kind of sucked. Keep charts or outlines, mark them off as you need to. You need to be aware of everything that you are setting up with each character and where they're going as far as plot, what you need to have revealed to get to certain plot points. Have a nice little checklist on hand, so when you reach the midpoint, you're like, Deathclaw has murdered Sir Fluffy Buns. We are now able to move on to the midpoint, where Sir Fluffy Buns rises from the grave and enacts havoc on the world of cats. None of this is actually part of 9 Point. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm sorry for this video. I deeply apologize. I am working on the Honeywell's ebooks today, and I'm sassy. I'm a sassy Deathclaw. Deathclaw is me. Oh man. Okay, those are my tips. Don't do it. Support the 9 Point Kickstarter instead of adding characters to your plot. For every character you wish to add, you owe me $1 to my Kickstarter. Haha. Oh man, I'm gonna go to bed. Thank you. Goodbye.